If you've spent any time trying to learn about credit card points, you probably come across a bunch of rules that get repeated constantly. Always transfer your points, never pay an annual fee, and at some point you just kind of absorb them, right? Like these must be the rules. But a lot of this advice doesn't really hold up if you are just trying to get some value out of your regular spending. So today I want to walk you through 7 of the most common ones and talk about when they actually make sense and when you can just let them go. Before we get into it, I want to preface that I'm not saying that these are all terrible advice across the board. Some of them are genuinely useful starting points. But what I'm saying here is that they get repeated so confidently in situations where they just don't belong. And that's when it starts to work against you. So let's get into it. Number one, never pay an annual fee. Now, I understand where this one is coming from. Paying a fee on a credit card kind of feels backwards, like the whole point is that the credit card is supposed to give you things and not cost you money upfront. But an annual fee is really only a problem if you're not getting back from it more than what you're paying for it. And that's genuinely the whole analysis. Let's take the example of the Capital One VeggerX credit card. Now, this credit card comes with an annual fee that looks huge. It's at $395. But when you dive into the benefits, you look at the travel credit, which gives you $300 back every single year. And every single year, you also get 10,000 points with this card, which is equivalent of $100. So now that you look at the math, it's like getting $400 back from a card that costs $400. So overall, the math is adding up here. So you're not paying more than what you're getting back. Now, the flip side of this is also worth talking about. If you just have this one no annual fee card that earns 1% cash back or 1x points on everything, that's just sitting there and earning you that 1x, and that's quietly costing you points because you could be earning more with other cards. Now, here's the practical takeaway for you. For any cards that you're considering, write down what kind of benefits it offers you, including all those statement credits and the points. And then ask yourself, will I actually use these credits and do these credits actually fit my life? If the credits alone cover this annual fee and they fit your life, meaning you actually do use them and you're not going out of your way to use these credits, then this card, it can probably be worth it. And if half of those credits are from brands that you never use or will have to go out of your way to use, the math here will not work out, meaning the card looks good on paper, but it doesn't actually suit your actual life. Number two, always maximize every bonus category. So this is the idea that every single purchase that you make should go on a card that gets you the highest spend multiplier for that purchase. So gas goes on one card, dining goes on another, and grocery goes on the third. And you are constantly rotating based on which card gives you the maximum points for that category. And I get why that sounds appealing. In theory, you're getting the maximum value out of every dollar that you spend. But in practice, I think it's way more effort than it's worth. Here's how I actually think about it, and what I tell most people when we talk through their setups. Look at your monthly spending and figure out the top 2 to 3 categories where most of your money goes and write that down. Maybe that's dining and groceries, maybe it's dining, groceries, and travel. Whatever it is for you, get 1 to 2 cards that are really strong in those categories and then use them intentionally to earn the maximum points for where your money goes the most. And everything else, just let it accumulate on whichever card you've got. Yes, you might be leaving some points on the table, but overall, I think it's going to be pretty small if you look at the bigger picture. We're talking maybe like a few dollars worth of points every month. I just think it's not really worth it to build your whole life around it. So here's the practical takeaway for you. Look at your monthly expenses and figure out 1 to 3 categories that are your top spend categories on average every single month. And those are the categories that are worth optimizing around. So 1 to 2 cards that cover those categories are genuinely just enough to start with. By the way, if all of this feels a little overwhelming and you would like an organized system to track all your points, your cards, all the annual fees, I created a system for that. It's an online spreadsheet that I'm sharing for free. So if you're interested, check it out in the pinned comment below. And if you would like to also grab a one-on-one credit card strategy session with me, I also have a link for that. I just opened some slots for next month. So check it out. I'll leave it in the description box below. Back to the video now. Number 3, more cards equals more points. This one feels logical. More cards means more welcome bonuses, more points coming in, more categories covered. And at a certain level, this makes sense. With the right systems in place, that can totally be true. But for most people, more cards just means that much more to manage. More annual fees to keep a track of, more minimum spends to hit, and more chances for something to fall through the cracks. It's honestly more than what you would imagine. The people who do really well with bigger card portfolios are the ones who've genuinely built habits around it. So they know what their fee calendar looks like. They know when to product change. They know how many points they're spending versus earning. So all of this really helps them out. But if you're not there yet, adding more cards than you can comfortably manage can lead to all this unnecessary stress and anxiety and lead to things falling through the cracks, which we do not want. Honestly, it doesn't really build your points balance as much as it builds your stress. Here's a practical takeaway for you. Before you get any new card, ask yourself, do I have a clear plan for what this card will achieve? A clear spend category that it covers, a welcome bonus or minimum spend that I can realistically hit, and a reason that it fits my setup. And if the honest answer to that is no, then this is probably not the right time to get that card. Number 4, you have to travel a lot for points to be worth it. This one probably keeps more people out of the points world than anything else on this list, and I think that is a shame. The assumption is that if you're not taking multiple international trips a year, points are not really worth getting into. And I really don't think that is true. Points don't immediately expire while you're building them. Yes, you don't need to sit on them or hoard them forever. That's definitely not a good practice. But for someone who's trying to accumulate enough points so they can redeem it meaningfully, for a trip that they care about, I think that can bring real value. They don't need to be a frequent flyer for that. They just need to be a little patient. I don't think that you need to be traveling constantly for all of this to make sense. If you work backwards from 1 or 2 trips that you want to take, then I think this can provide you real value and save you some real money. So here's a practical takeaway from you. If you're new to credit card points and want to get into it, think of one trip that you want to take in the next few months or in the next 1.5 years and work backwards from there. Build your point strategy around getting there, and everything you earn from now until then can definitely be dedicated to that one goal of traveling there with points. Number 5, always transfer your points and never use the travel portal. Okay, so this one, there is some real truth behind it. If you learn how to transfer your points to airline or hotel partners, that can definitely unlock incredible value of your points. So let's say you want to fly to Japan on business class. You're not going to pay cash for it, I know, but if you were to do that, that would cost you like $3,000 to $4,000 one way. And if you learn how all these transfer partners work, you can spend like 60,000 points only and get to Japan one way on business class, which is incredible value. That is real, and that's the kind of thing that makes this hobby definitely worth it. But the blanket rule of never use the portal, I think that's where things start to fall apart a little. There are some totally reasonable situations where using your points on the bank's travel portal can actually be the smarter call. So let's say you have a smaller stash of points that's not quite ready to hit that award threshold yet. If you were to transfer them to that airline or hotel partner, it could just be sitting there without it meaning anything. So, what's the point? And then, if you keep waiting around to accumulate more points, they can actually lose value over time. So, you can't be doing that either. Sometimes, when you need flexibilities like mixed itineraries or booking those flights that are not served by partner awards, the portal can be your best friend in this case if you have enough points to use through the portal. And if you don't have a specific international trip in mind, the portal is a simple way to book domestic flights while you're still learning, and that is completely okay. The thing about transfers is that they are one way, you cannot undo them. So if you were to transfer points out without really knowing what you're doing with them, you're kind of wasting your points in a way. So if someone tells you that you should always transfer your points, maybe they know exactly what they're doing or they have done this a long time, so they really understand how this works. But while you're learning, I think it's perfectly all right to use the travel portal as you ramp up and start to learn about this. And here's a practical takeaway from you. Before you transfer any of your points, have a specific trip and a specific transfer partner in mind. Learn how many points you would need to get to that point where you can book that trip using that partner, and only then transfer your points. Other than that, it's perfectly okay to use the travel portal. If you are to transfer your points, transfer them with intention and not because someone said you should. Number 6, always get the highest sign up bonus available. On the surface, this makes sense. More points upfront are always better, right? But there are some ways in which this quietly steers people wrong. The first one is minimum spend. A bigger bonus almost always comes with a bigger minimum spend requirement. So let's say a card wants you to spend $6,000 in the next 3 months, but your original spending pattern only allows for $1,000 a month. You would either overspend it or miss that bonus entirely. So both of these things kind of defeat the purpose of that sign up bonus. The second thing is that waiting around for the best ever offer can mean that you are sitting on the sidelines and not earning anything on your current spending. A solid offer right now is honestly better than a slightly better one in 6 months. And honestly, that biggest bonus card offer may not even be the right fit for you or match your lifestyle anyway. So, why get a card with a massive offer that cannot even perform well for your actual and current lifestyle? Here's a practical takeaway for you. Whenever you are evaluating a welcome bonus, check how much is the minimum spend requirement and in how many months do they ask you to fulfill that requirement. Then you should map it against your current monthly spending and see if you can hit that comfortably without really changing your habits. Because if you are to change your habits for this, it kind of defeats the purpose and can be a bad financial decision. Number 7, just get the best card for each category. Okay, so this isn't a rule that you will hear stated explicitly, but it's a pattern that I see a lot, especially with people who have done a little research and know what they're doing. So here's how the logic goes. I'll get the Amex Gold card because that gets me 4x points on groceries and 4x points on dining. Then I'll get the City card because that gets me 3x points on gas. And then I'll get the Chase card because it gets me 3x points on travel, and so on and so forth. And here is why that can become a real problem. Amex, City, Capital One, Build, all of them are separate ecosystems. So they are their separate entities, they earn points separately, and they have their separate lists of all the transfer partners that they work with. And those lists do not fully overlap. So if you just start building your Amex point stash and your City point stash without realizing that they serve different partners, there could come a time when you are ready to book your trip, but neither of these stashes alone will get you there, and now you cannot combine them. Here's a simple example. Amex Gold earns you 4x points on groceries and 4x points on dining, which is great. And then City Straight Up Premier earns you 3x points on gas, which is also great. But you have to know the list of transfer partners that both these banks have so that when you're trying to redeem it for a trip, you know that these points can go into a common transfer partner which can help you when you're ready to book your trip. Otherwise, you could just end up with a split stash that does not really serve your actual goal of traveling. So, this is not about one ecosystem being better than another. They all have their strengths, but it's about understanding who the transfer partners are and what kind of overlaps there are before you go into split stashes and start building on separate ecosystems. So here's a practical takeaway for you. Before you add any new card to your wallet, go through the list of transfer partners and try to look for synergies with your existing ecosystem. So let's say you're working with Amex right now and you're looking to add the City cards. Just look at the list of City transfer partners and see if there are any synergies that you can see between your Amex transfer partners and City transfer partners. If your goal eventually is to combine those points and make a bigger redemption, that always comes in handy for sure. For a beginner, I would say pick a primary ecosystem first, try to learn that, try to get comfortable with it. And once you do, and once you start to understand how transfer partners work and which are the common ones that you can leverage across ecosystems, that's when you step into another ecosystem. So, those were the 7 rules that I think should be taken with a grain of salt. None of them are completely wrong. In fact, most of them are and can be solid advice for many people, but you just need to understand it based on your own situation. I think sometimes the points world has a tendency to present some advice as universal when it's really not. So, that's what I wanted to talk about in today's video. At the end of the day, you need to know how your spending works, what your goals are, and not just listen to anyone on the internet. It's always important to look at your own situation before you start getting into all these credit cards. And if you want help through any of this for your specific setup, that's exactly why I offer the one-on-one strategy calls. If you're interested, I'll drop the link in the description box below. Check it out. And that was it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.